What's the hacks, all you R-Space fans? Today, we're coming at you with some cheating stories. Let's see just how devastating they are, and if we can find someone out there with some decent advice. Let's dig in. My fiancé, 30 male, cheated on me after being long distance for a year. We've been engaged for over 4 years, but I kept putting the wedding off because it's just not my thing, and wouldn't change our long distance, which is because of my career. We're due to stay long distance for another 2 years. We've been through things together that I think most couples don't go through in a lifetime. I won't post specifics in the rare event someone I know finds this, but it involves serious family loss and tragedy. His, not mine. There's also a history of drug and alcohol use. He used recreationally with his family members when he was a teenager, but discontinued all but marijuana before we met. Now the marijuana is long gone too. However, he and his family members have always struggled with alcohol. He's made great improvements over the years, and now the only times he stumbles is due to the influence of family. Still an ongoing problem I'm very aware of, but he's tried. A little over a year ago, he started a side business, just a few months before COVID shut everything down. He ended up losing everything, but before that happened, he was working extremely hard to get his business off the ground. He ended up meeting some interesting people along the way, including a girl he describes as mentally and emotionally unstable. I didn't know about her until things between us got a little off, around this time last year. I didn't pry though, because I was dealing with extreme stress at work and just didn't have the time to put much effort in. I admit, I was not very emotionally present in the long-distance relationship, but only because I was working 80-plus-hour weeks in a hospital. He came to visit one week and told me guilt was eating him alive. He had met this girl, Jay. They got to talking and spending some time together over the course of a couple weeks, and he ended up going to her place, where she gave him a massage, and they ended up kissing. He came to his senses, panicked, and fled her place. I was floored. This man had previously been the most genuine, committed person I knew. He never even liked silly jokes about cheating, finding them offensive to the sanctity of relationships or marriage. We're Catholic. He was extremely regretful. I had lots of questions over the next days and weeks and brought them up several times. Though most of this was via phone, I distinctly remember saying, "Tell me everything, because this is the last time I ever want to talk about this again." He claimed nothing happened beyond kissing. I told him to cut off all contact and we could consider rebuilding our trust, but no guarantees. A couple of weeks later, I caught on to the fact that, although he had deleted her number, he hadn't blocked her. Then she texted or called him about something regarding the mall where he had his business. I flipped. Everything got rehashed. He showed me he deleted and blocked her number, and he broke off contact. I was beyond embarrassed, feeling I wasn't respecting myself, but we eventually moved on. I will admit, it made us stronger because it was a massive wake-up call to me. My life isn't my career. My career is my life, and I wasn't paying enough attention to what he needed, what we needed to be healthy. Arguably, my circumstances were more difficult than his, but I digress. It's been a hard year due to other circumstances, including my having to move away even farther. Again, my career, but this is the last step before we can finally be together. This winter, we finally started wedding planning, still long-distance relationship. He had been asking for years, and I finally agreed to a mini ceremony. I bought a beautiful dress last week with money I didn't have, and I started getting excited. Last night, he texts me as I'm driving home that he has a story weighing heavily on him that he has to tell me. He has been progressively deepening his connection with God all year, so when I call him, he explains that he cannot keep hiding anymore. He explains that when he met Jay, she convinced him to try some magic mushrooms. He was high on a major Catholic holiday, the first time we had actually celebrated it apart. Then, a couple of weeks later, she spun him a sob story about her mother dying, so he went to her place where he took some drugs. Not sure what. With her. One thing led to another, and she performed an act on him. When she wanted to take it further to sex, he snapped out of his high, panicked, and fled. He then explained he maintained cordial contact with her over the next couple of weeks, only to protect himself, thinking she would retaliate by telling me everything and potentially making up lies. This was his first time taking drugs since we've been together. By doing so, he jeopardized a career he has worked extremely hard for. He did cut off contact with her shortly thereafter. I was stunned into silence. I cannot believe this is happening to me. I worked too hard to deserve such poor treatment and being lied to for a year. And I can't help but think about how I just sunk money into a freaking wedding dress last week, and now I can't even bear to think about it. I've always been the self-preserving type to walk away from bad situations with my head held high. But despite all the crap we've been through, I've never been able to walk away from him, even when times were tough, and he's hurt me. I feel numb. I vacillate between extreme sadness and extreme rage. At the same time, I feel horrible to admit that I still love him and always will, regardless of what I choose to do now. My mood swings from preparing to walk away, but also moments where I think about forgiveness. I know that if I read this from someone else, I'd tell that person to leave because I have no tolerance for cheating. I know if I told my parents, who adore him, they'd be horrified. He not only cheated, but then lied about it for a year, telling me only a half-truths. He used drugs, jeopardizing everything. But how do I walk away from the history we have? He knows every part of me, my fears, my dreams, and I know he loves me. I can't imagine, and don't want this with anyone else in the world. I know he is genuinely regretful. I do not doubt this for one moment. But will I always worry about something like this happening again? Can I look at him the same way again? I don't know. I'm pretty sure I know what the consensus will be from you all, looking for stories about similar experiences, and whether there's any way to salvage this while also preserving my own dignity and self-respect. The first comment comes in from CoolBreeze7. I'm a fan of being direct and blunt. Please hear this as me trying to help you. Sounds like an unhealthy relationship all around. I don't need to tell you how he screwed up. I'd encourage you to ask yourself some honest, hard questions. A 4-year engagement, to me, sounds like marriage really isn't a priority. There's nothing at all wrong with pursuing your career, but the fact y'all have been so far apart for so long makes it seem like neither of you prioritize this relationship. It's scary losing something that's been in there for so long, but I think a healthy marriage is when two people prioritize the other above themselves. I don't see that from the synopsis of your relationship on either side. You deserve something more in a relationship. So does he, despite his deplorable actions. And the OP comes back with, I do appreciate this. You're absolutely right. Marriage is definitely not a priority for me right now because it won't change our distance nor our relationship. But once I'm done with residency in 2 years, I can focus on my life again, and we can pick one definitive place to settle down. His career wouldn't allow multiple moves, while mine required it. I've offered him in and out several times, including when I first learned about the infidelity. He never wants to take it. He keeps trying to find ways to move in with me, but doing so would likely end his career. We both keep falling into this question of our careers versus our relationship, and it's remarkable we've been able to persist for so long despite the odds. I have been working towards mine for as long as I can remember. I've wanted this since I was a small child, so I've never been willing to give it up. At the same time, I could never ask him to give up his. Just a little explanation to anyone wondering about this aspect. Our next story. After months of on and off communication, I recently found out my 21 female boyfriend, 22 male, cheated on me, and now I'm obsessed with this girl. Back in July, my boyfriend of 2 years decided to join a conservation corps and move away for 6 months. I was extremely supportive because I trusted him and loved him with my whole heart. And who the heck would I be to tell him not to follow through with his dreams? First month was great. We talked every day, and it was like he never left. I even got an Airbnb and stayed with him for a weekend in August. After our weekend together is when things started to take a turn for the worst. He would literally ignore me for weeks at a time. Okay, he's in the woods, no electricity. I get that he will call when he gets into town. Except he wouldn't call when he got into town, but I would see him active on Instagram. After finally getting a hold of him after barely speaking, he broke up with me. I thought, oh, he's just in the woods, nothing to do, has a lot of downtime, probably just thought about things too much. Didn't speak to him for a couple of weeks, and then he reached out and apologized and said he screwed up and wanted to make things right. Things were fine for 2 whole weeks. I went and spent Halloween with his family, booked another Airbnb to go and see him, and he swore to me things were going to work and he was going to communicate better. Well, after the 2 weeks, he told me to cancel the Airbnb and that we shouldn't be together. We were broken up for a solid month. The worst month of my life. I've never felt so freaking depressed and disposed of in my freaking life. Throughout all of this, I, of course, had my suspicions and confronted him multiple times about the girl I was concerned about, to which he responded that there was nothing happening and nothing to worry about. I trusted him. I was juvenile and made a fake account and pretty much knew exactly what was happening, exactly when it was happening, this whole freaking time. This past Friday, 12/4, he reached out to me after a month telling me he screwed up and wanted me more than anything. I picked him up from where he was hitched at. We spoke and cried and screamed, and I brought him back to his family's house. He told his family that he knows he screwed up and that he wants to marry me and stop his conservation program and come home and get a real job and settle down. This night, I was dumb enough to sleep with him. I missed him so much, and just being with him in person after so long just felt so right. I felt disgusted right after and made him swear that there was nothing he needed to tell me. He said there was absolutely nothing. The next day, we went on a 3-hour hike and talked about everything, and still he seemed remorseful and regretful, and like he was so freaking serious. That night, he brought me to family dinner and family game night. The game was Secret Hitler, which is all about lying similar to Among Us. After the game, I drove him home and expressed how after seeing how easy it was for him to lie in a game, I can't help but to not trust what he is saying. Pulled into his driveway and cruised to him and told him to swear on his mother's life that he did not screw this girl, and he did. I drove off, ready to go home, and as I'm about to get on the highway, he calls and tells me to turn around. I get there, and he's standing outside in the freezing cold, crying, and I freaking know exactly what he's about to say. So of course, I scream and scream, and he doesn't have the balls to say it. Yada yada yada. Turns out I was 100% right about absolutely freaking everything. He cheated on me with this girl. He was having a relationship with this girl. This girl messaged me and told me I destroyed her world. He lied to me for freaking months. So the next day, I decided to give him one last mother freaking chance, and he was all about making things right, and then bam, he gets back to camp and doesn't want to be with me anymore. I'm freaking destroying myself with the snooping and the comparing myself to her. I feel like freaking nothing. I feel freaking disgusting. I freaking hate him. I can't feel anything but pain. I don't know what to do with myself. Yikes. Obsessed much? I guess that's to be expected since it's in the title. Let's see what the community thinks. Madam Kitsune says, block him everywhere. Don't give him a chance to come back yet again because his fling with Jungle Jezebel has hit another rocky patch, or he wants some company when she's not available. He's a deceptive, immature louse, and you can do better. Block her so she can't snipe at you whenever he starts playing with her feelings the way he did yours. It'll also reduce the temptation to cyberstalk her. For you personally, I'd say find ways to distract yourself. Start a new hobby that you can do at home. 'Cause pandemic and all. Try learning a new language. Take up knitting. Lots of tutorials online. Choose something that takes concentration so your thoughts are less likely to stray to either of them. Cry, shout, rage into the wind if that helps you let go of him. Write a letter saying everything you wish you could say to him, and then burn it without ever sending it. Go for socially distanced walks and pretty places. Taking time to notice all the natural features, birds and sounds. Draw peace from it, and dip into that peace when you feel the rage rising. Most of all, work towards the greatest revenge of all by growing as a person, living well, and finding happiness within yourself. Good luck. And our last story is titled, My boyfriend, 30 male, of 4 years cheated on me, 24 female, because I'm infertile. So my story is rather long, and I apologize in advance, and just looking for advice about how to get through my situation. My boyfriend of 4 years cheated on me, and his reason was because of my infertility. To start, I met him when I was 20, through a group chat with a bunch of friends looking to meet for a bar or club crawl. After 2 months of dating, things were getting serious, and I felt it important to let him know that starting a family with me in the future will be hard. Looking back, I maybe shouldn't have released that information so early on, but I always believed that a person should have a choice to be with me or not based on that medical defect. He mentioned it wasn't a problem, and should we get to that point, there's a lot of resources we can reference to start a family if we wanted to. That made me feel very secure. About a year and a half into the relationship, we moved in together. I was so excited. I never lived with a partner before and thought it was something amazing. Shortly after moving in, I became sad. I noticed he'd be up at night, like 3 a.m., texting next to me. A few months passed before I asked him to stop. He did, but only for a few weeks. I confronted him about it at the end, and he told me I was being insecure. At the time, I didn't really think of him cheating or anything, so I redirected myself to becoming more secure and not worrying about it. One day, I got a message on Twitter from a girl laughing in my DMs, saying that she had been cheating with him for a month. I showed the message to him, and he was angry. At me! I questioned him about his anger, saying it's misdirected, and he needs to tell me what's happening. He ignored me all night, and I decided to look at his phone. Pause. I'd never normally snoop. I felt overwhelmed in this moment, and I moved in with this guy, and now feel very trapped and betrayed. I'd ask questions or wait for him to come to me, but nothing ever happened. Okay, continue. Apparently, he had cheated with this girl the year we started dating over the summer on a trip that I paid for to Cali for his birthday. It happened a night I was too tired to go out again after drinking, so he decided to do some exploring on his own. After we returned home to New York City, him and this girl stayed connected, where she flew out to him to continue their situation. I confronted him again about what I found in his phone, and of course, he was furious with me. I decided to break up with him and move to Georgia to spend some time with my parents and siblings while I took classes online from my university. 3 months had passed, and he flew to Georgia unannounced to get me back. He was my first serious relationship, so I feel stupid saying this, but no one has ever made a grand gesture like this to gain me back before. We moved back in together after we worked it out, and things were seemingly back to normal. I was still very fragile. 2 years passed, and things became strange again. He flew out to the Caribbean with a group of his friends, and he came back home saying he was burning when he peed. He kept trying to convince me it was from swimming in a lake on the island that said no swimming. What? My family all are doctors and nurses, so I knew a thing or two about certain things, so I somehow thought maybe he has a UTI from said water, and I should trust him since we already sorted through our initial cheating hiccups. Told him to go to the ER to get antibiotics. He showed me paperwork from the doctors trying to prove to me it wasn't an STI, and simply just a UTI. I fact-checked to confirm, and he was telling the truth. One day, I was spending some time with my aunt and my grandmother. He called and said he misses me and he wants me to come home. I did. He had gotten me a puppy. I've always wanted a pup. Shortly after we celebrated, he said he had to go to a coworker's baby shower. It was strange because it was last minute, and the only time I had heard about this coworker. I shrugged it off. The next morning, he said he wanted to spend the day with me, but an hour into it, he says his friend wanted to work out with him. I had studying to do, so figured I'd just study in peace till he got back. 12 p.m. came, then 4 p.m., then 7 p.m. I called and texted between those times, but nothing. No answer. No call back, no texts. I was actually scared that something had happened to him. I was convinced someone had robbed him and left him in a ditch. I thought the worst. We both had iPhones, and I decided to sign into his Find My iPhone account and see where his location was. It was in the location where his friend lives, but I figured I'd hop on a train and check it out. Me thinking he's in danger. It got late, and now it's 9:30 p.m. I'm calling him at this point, and he's sending me to voicemail. I know what it sounds like when you get sent to voicemails. I sent some angry texts and said I pinged him and that I'm outside his location. He called me back. He said he's coming in there. He emerged from the person's home, kissing her on the lips and hugging her goodbye. I argued with him as we walked to the train station together. I'm screaming and crying, and he didn't seem a bit engaged with me at all. In fact, he seems rather annoyed with me. I told him, "Why would you do this to me after all we've been through together?" He finally turned to me and said, "I can get things with her that I can't have with you." I knew right then my infertility was the topic. This was 6 months ago. The day I learned they're now engaged. He gifted her my puppy, whom I named Nova. He got me. We had a long battle over who should get Nova before I caved and let him keep her. I've been stalking his Instagram since then just to see how my girl is doing. I feel like I can't breathe most days. I've lost so much weight and actually look really ill. I guess I just need some advice about what to do next. How do I move on? Should I go to court for my pup back? Any advice is helpful. And please, you can criticize me for going back the first time, but no, it was my first relationship, and that's always the hardest to let go of. So the community starts off with, "Peep is my cat. Would you want him back if you could get him back? I mean, really? There's talk at the end of your post about getting your dog back, but he's already given it away to somebody else. Would you even want the dog back? I'm not going to criticize you for any of your decisions, but I think it's time for you to turn your back on this situation and move on. Get yourself back out there and find somebody else you might want to date. Seriously, it doesn't sound like there's much for you there," with the 30 male. Also, I don't know if this is about your infertility. I think you did the right thing by being upfront and honest with him. I feel confident that you'll meet a guy that will not mind the situation at all. Good luck to you. Another thought comes in from Key Witness 8184. "Girl, sound like you dodged a bullet here. You sound like a great partner, and you deserve someone who puts as much effort into a relationship as you do. My advice is, he didn't cheat on you because you're infertile. He cheated on you because he just can't commit to a relationship. It's absolutely not your fault. Sounds like you wanted an excuse so he doesn't have to feel guilty about himself. Please don't believe it. Grand gestures don't mean nothing if he doesn't do the bare minimum. They're just a way of keeping you close. It's like he's just doing whatever he can to string you along and distract you from the things he doesn't want you to see. You deserve someone who cares and invests on the relationship on a daily basis, not someone who dismisses your feelings, doesn't communicate, leaves you worried with no response at night, and gets annoyed when you find out he's cheating. I know it's your first relationship, and it will be hard, but you will learn a lot from this, trust me. If it's important to you, go to court for the dog. I love my pets, so I would absolutely try to get mine back if I were you. And you know,